He is risen. Did you say the thing? We're covering the resurrection today. We're starting in Matthew chapter 28, verse 2. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. Anyone would probably faint at the sight of a heavenly being whose appearance was like lightning rolling a giant stone away. But the stone wasn't rolled away for Jesus. It was rolled away so that others may see it was empty. It's interesting that there isn't an actual recording of the instance of the resurrection. It was not for the eyes of mortal men. But it was after the resurrection that God commanded the angels to roll the stone away so that there would be irrefutable evidence of the resurrection. This also might be a good time to note, chapter 27 actually jumped ahead a little. It says that some people rose from the dead and went out of their tombs to go to Jerusalem, where they met many people. All this happened once Jesus was resurrected as well. Like Lazarus, these people didn't have the full resurrection, but it was an example that Jesus had the power to do so. So we shouldn't doubt that the resurrection is real. Let's go to Luke 24. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. Mark says that on the way there, they were wondering how they were even going to roll the stone away. They were still very faithful because they didn't even have a plan. They were expecting a dead body, and there's no reason to believe there was any wishful thinking. But when they got there, the guards were either on the ground unconscious, or they had run away because of their shame. And the stone was rolled away, and there were only wrappings. The angels reminded them of Jesus' words. The promise was fulfilled now. It's super easy to have doubt before the promise is fulfilled, but once it happens, you wonder why you even had doubt. It was at this point that the women were bold about the resurrection. He has risen. Real quick, though, let's cover Matthew 28:11. While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, 'His disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep.' If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and the story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. Maybe Nicodemus or Joseph was listening to this conversation. They know they buried a dead body. They would probably find the disciples whenever they could and ask what happened. And it's funny because in context when it says, "This story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day," it is still only talking about the 1st century. But it's gone a little farther than that, hasn't it? The words "to this very day" still work. People will dream up anything because they don't want to believe the truth. Let's go back to Luke 24:9. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. I wonder what the disciples were doing at that point. Probably keeping a low profile. It doesn't say what house or what town or what the conversation was. All I can guess is that it was a dreary group of people. Then you can imagine that the women burst in the door and told them that Jesus has risen. Unfortunately, back then a woman's testimony wasn't always held in high regard. But Peter had to see it nonetheless. And as John humbly says, That lazy bum named Peter did not make it to the tomb first, but the disciple that Jesus loved more than anyone else made it first. Very humble indeed. Jokes aside, John does give us an important detail about the tomb. It's in John chapter 20, and based on what it says, we have to assume that the clothes were not taken off. They were lying there in perfection, and it's possible that the wrappings were a bit of a hard cast, so it's like they were still in the shape of a body. The conclusion is that Jesus pulled an Obi-Wan and disappeared. The angels were right. No need to look for the living among the dead. He has risen. We're going to cover Jesus' appearances next time. See you then.